I'm Dave Pickles. I'm the CTO and co-founder of the Trade Desk. I've been working on this strange project of online advertising for about 12 or 13 years, 10 of those with the Trade Desk. Before that, I was one of the lead developers on the ad exchange at Microsoft.
I'm Joanna O'Connell. I'm a VP and principal analyst at Forrester Research. I've been in digital advertising for 20 years.
Today, Joanna and I are going to have an honest conversation about identity, at least as it comes to the internet and television.
So if we're going to think about, how we got to this place and this conversation that Dave and I are going to have around identity, I think we need to go back in time, like really to the advent of digital advertising. Because I think that's where it all stems from, where we started using things like third-party cookies as underlying infrastructure, where we started using digital advertising as a very down funnel kind of environment, where we were focusing on proxy metrics like clicks, where we were really, really interested in this idea of getting a consumer to do something now, and where we really saw just a massive amount of innovation and development in terms of the kind of data and technology itself that was going to support digital advertising. And if I think about, why all of that matters, that history lesson, it's really because that those early beginnings, I think, set us up for this sort of weird place in which we find ourselves now.
It's sort of funny that here we are in 2021, everybody's panicked because the cookie's going away. So we're all very upset that bad technology is being replaced by hopefully some much better technology. So in that way, it's actually good riddance to strange tech and welcome to the future.
So, okay. So, you and I have been around the block several times now in the digital advertising industry. And I think we've also kind of seen how we've got all of these major forces that are at play that, ultimately, at least based on how we are used to doing things, are going to lead to a more data-sparse future. You've got browsers deprecating the third-party cookie. Of course, when Google made the announcement, that was when everybody's hands kind of went in the air because of the dominant market position of Chrome. You've got consumers privacy protecting actions, and we know that they do. They tell us, and we see it. We have legislation and regulation that is becoming more common, not less, and more stringent, not less stringent. And we've got the walled gardens who, create these very sort of siloed views of consumers and manage data very carefully. So I think what's important about at least the first three, it's an action that is representative of consumer protection, regulation and legislation sort of operating on behalf of the consumer. And why are they doing this? Well, because the sense, I think, is that the use of things like third-party cookies and cross-site tracking and the like was done in a way that was not well understood, not well managed, and maybe not necessarily to the benefit of the consumer. And I think we probably have to have a conversation about this idea of value and benefit to the consumer.
I think the basic problem is that cookies aren't understandable. Consumers can't understand them, regulators can't understand them, engineers can't understand them, so they do all kinds of things. So that's the starting point, is that nobody actually understands how they are. And so regulators are trying to regulate something they don't and can't understand. Mm-hmm. Consumers are just sort of like afraid, but they don't really know what's happening. And so really the thing that I'm trying to fix fundamentally is that. And I think you're right. It has to be a conversation with consumers about what's happening. It has to be explainable, and it has to all be driven from the value exchange. So why would I say yes to something? Convince me to say yes to it.
But to be honest, I think we have to be honest with ourselves. I don't think anybody was really loudly raising the alarm until, again, the Google Chrome announcement was made. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, it's because it breaks stuff, right? So if we think about this idea of creating a new future, it can't be just about fixing the thing that was broken. It's about acknowledging all of the things that got us here so that you create some kind of solution that's sustainable for the future, right? I mean, back to the consumer and understanding what's happening and the value exchange and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, I've always looked at these things as like, I'm trying to get all the signal I can. And so if somebody is installing an ad blocker, they're sending me a pretty strong signal, but they're probably not going to respond well to the ads. That serving them an ad from a brand is likely to be considered a violation of trust to them, and then it's going to harm the brand. So let's not do that. Let's honor that choice. And, we spent a bunch of time building tools to try to help people opt out. We made an ad choices icon. We built an opt-out tool because we were trying to get some sense of that signal of like where this consumer is at. And the piece that has to accompany that, though, is there has to be an explanation of the quid pro quo, because the opt-out tool and ad blockers both create a situation where you can freeload. You can go consume content that you're not helping pay for. And that's not something that should be supported by the software platform. If you want to consume media, which is not free to produce, costs money, you need to either provide money or help the site with monetization through looking at ads.
I definitely am with you. Again, the fundamental value exchange is what helps power the content of creation, ads in exchange for, content creation. What is kind of interesting is I was looking at some of our consumer technographics data, and you'll find that the majority of US online adults will say that they would rather see ads than pay for content. But they will also say, generally, the majority, that they disagree with sharing their personal information in exchange for personalized advertising. So there's like something in there. There's definitely the kind of like, well, if I don't have to see ads, why would I see them at all? And of course, that's problematic because that's not sustainable. But beyond that, there's also just something about this idea of targeted advertising that we have to figure out how to fix in a sustainable way, because, again, they're sort of telling us, there's something about that I don't like. And so, how do we redefine what relevancy can mean? Like you said, someone who's using an ad blocker is giving you strong signal that they don't want to hear from you. How do we use other kinds of signals to be able to say, well, this is just not a person I serve an ad to, or certainly not a personalized ad to. Wish we'd been doing some of those things over the last 5 years. And I think in general, as an industry, we have been to try and really figure that stuff out. And now we're kind of at a point where things are breaking.
Well, so there's a couple of things there. One is the way you ask the question, because you can make that question as scary as you want and get people to say no to it when it doesn't need to be scary at all. And then also, you didn't explain to them that giving away that information would mean they would see fewer ads. And that's an important part of, I think, the contract that needs to be fleshed out better, which is that if you don't want to give data, no problem. You're going to have to watch 8 ads per pod in your television show. If you allow the use of your data in an anonymized and very safe way that I can explain to you and you can understand and you can opt out of whenever you want, you get 2. Now we're talking about a value exchange, right? Of course, there's more work to do. There's a lot more work to do. I think the thing to focus on is, let's make sure we don't do it in television. So now that all TV is moving into our purview, the level of responsibility, I think, just went up a stair step for all of us to get our act together.